I now call the September 8th, 2020 work session meeting of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilman Larson and invocation by Councilman Hancock.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here together as a city council and with the citizens who have come and the city staff. We thank Thee very much for the opportunity to serve the citizens of this fair city. We ask that it please bless us that as we do so, that we can have our minds enlightened to their needs, and that we can be able to do the things which will help make our city better and which will ensure our future. We thank Thee very much for all those who serve in various capacities throughout this community, and we ask that it please bless them with safety, especially those who serve us in the military, those who serve in the police force or with the fire departments. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Would the city clerk please conduct roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilwoman Carla Borders.
Here.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Here.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Here.
Councilwoman Rebecca Schatza.
Here.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilman Corey Rhoda.
Here.
Mayor Richard Gard.
Here. I declare we have a quorum present. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilwoman Schatz and a second by Councilman Rhoda. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Item number 7, the Riverton Municipal Code 8.04 fireworks discussion. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. On February 19th of 2019, the City Council considered Ordinance 19003 and passed Ordinance 19003, amending 8.04010 of the Riverton Municipal Code, allowing fireworks at particular times. At that time, the changes made to the code allowed for fireworks on New Year's Eve and the 4th of July in the hours as prescribed. It also set up or negated certain properties, including city property and school properties, for individuals to use outright without permission. However, they could obtain permission if they wanted to. It also set up verbiage for trash collection that required it, and ultimately changed the code, the standing code at the time. Since that time, we have had 2 4th of Julys come and go. The first year we had pretty wet weather, and this last year we didn't. The first year we heard almost no feedback on the matter, and so went on with our day. This last year we heard a little bit more feedback. Because of that, and because of that feedback and the discussions we've heard that came immediately after the 4th of July, we had mentioned having a work session at some time to take a look at what we did to the ordinance and what that has done and the feedback we had received. Hence the reason we're sitting here with this as part of our agenda this evening. At this time, since that time, on the 2 4th of Julys, being that none of the New Year's Eve in between there had no incidents of note, and we didn't really receive any feedback to my knowledge, at least at City Hall through us. The first 4th of July, we had 2 calls within city limits, I believe, none resulting in ultimately resulting in any real property damage. This last year, we had 2 calls within city limits, with one of those resulting in some property damage, and that was up at College Hill Apartments. The majority of the calls that are received are from outside of the city limits, and as such, council has no jurisdiction over the restriction on fireworks within those areas. So for the sake of our conversation this evening, we're only talking about what happens inside city limits. With that being said, I know everybody here has received some input at one time or another. Most of what I received directly, or that people came in and talked about or made a phone call, had more to do with their animals being upset and the litter Those were the two big items that I had heard, but I think I had only heard about 3 or 4 of those. I know some of the rest of you had heard otherwise, or had more or less feedback. The purpose of this is to discuss the way in which the ordinance has been provided, as well as any changes or thoughts that you might have to make it better. At this point, I will point out that the ordinance does take into account the ability for council to restrict at certain times as well. So in any of the years you have, whether if you come upon a 4th of July and it's going to be a red flag warning and we're worried about fires, council can restrict that year. Additionally, we do not allow commercial fireworks. So you have to be able to buy them at one of the stands in order for those to apply. Telling the difference between the two is difficult, but per the law, that is what it denotes. It does denote the hours, and those hours are different depending on the holiday as denoted within. So at this point, while I understand there is not a recommendation being sought because we're not proposing a change at this point, staff has not proposed modifying this at any point, but we are happy to receive any input and provide any information you might need for your discussion. With that, Your Honor, I have nothing else, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any discussion that anyone would like to add?
Your Honor, I guess I'll just jump in with both feet.
Okay.
I was all for this in the beginning when we first passed this ordinance, but after 2 years, and I've had several complaints and a lot of reason to reconsider. I'm all for personal freedom. That's what this country stands for. The problem I have is that sometimes the rights of everyone really affects a few, and I'm talking combat veterans. You know, I've heard a lot of concern, and I just feel like they've already given enough to our country. We don't need to traumatize them further by having, and even if it's for 4 hours, it's too much for some people. For the pets, you know, there's a lot of people that have to get up and work the next day, and to have fireworks going off at their house until midnight it's detrimental to them. So I would just like to see if we could come up with some sort of a compromise where maybe we can have some designated areas that we can set those off. I just think everywhere in town, although I think it'd be great if everyone just did sparklers and things like that, but the way it is right now, they can go buy loud noisemakers and it affects everybody. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Your Honor.
Rebecca?
Kind of going what Carla said, I'm a combat veteran as well, and I know a lot of combat veterans because of my service. I talk to a lot of military members, and I think out of all the members of military that I've talked to, veterans that I've talked to, that have served in way worse places than I did, in a lot worse times than I served, they are all for fireworks. So I think there's one out of all of them I've talked to that's against it, and I don't know where he served or what he did, but he just doesn't like fireworks because of that, is what he said. So I just gotta disagree with that. I've asked on Facebook about people's opinions about the ordinance, and the majority of people said, let's keep it going. It's 1 day a year. And most of them are people with children, unfortunately. I don't have a lot of elderly people on my Facebook, and a lot of them don't comment if they do see it. But the ones that did comment have children, and they've all said, you know, they understand the issue with the cleanup, and they would be willing to take their children out the next morning to clean up all different neighborhoods in town. And I have people messaging me privately saying, I would love to do that. That would be a good thing for our children to learn, you know, about cleanup and responsibility. And if we're going to do this kind of stuff for fun, we have to be able to clean up after ourselves. A gal did comment about having to work the next morning, but what her issue was that people don't follow the rules. People will keep going until way after midnight, even though the ordinance that we have in here is 11:45 p.m. So I absolutely agree that if we could get the police department on board on that evening to make stiffer fines or be more aggressive with those people that are not following the rules, because they will ruin it for everybody. I think this 4th of July was a little bit crazier than the last 4th of July, and I think a lot of it had to do with the COVID-19 situation, where people finally got to let loose a little bit and unwind, and some people probably did go too far. I stayed home this year for the 4th of July, and we lit fireworks, and I will admit too, after it was over, I was done about 11 o'clock, but I heard it all night long, and it was kind of frustrating, you know, because people can't follow the rules. But that's why we have these rules in here, to go at 11:45 p.m. and clean up after yourselves. We hit every nail on the head when it came to that code, and so I think we did everything right. I think people just need to take personal responsibility for what they do. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Your Honor, if I may. So I've kind of been thinking about this myself, and I talked to Chief DeClerc. He would like to see it not happen. The way I think about it, and I think would be a good idea, or maybe a way to look at it, is I would like to see it continue. I, as well as several others, we kind of have a little block party in our neighborhood, and everybody brings some fireworks, and it tends to be a good time. But the control, as Councilwoman Schatza had said, you get people who are shooting them the day before, and they're still shooting them after. Maybe the stricter fines is an idea. I really think we should be looking to the fire department and the chief on this. And I would love to see him have some kind of say-so in this, but I almost looked at it as like a 3-tier program based upon moisture, how wet the ground is, to where if it's too dry, you just can't do it because of fires. If it's kind of an even medium, then we say, okay, you have designated areas, we have to shoot it in this year. If it's wet enough, then you should be able to shoot them where you want. Again, you have the issue of litter, but we're talking about people and their personal self-respect and self-responsibility, and as much as we'd love to see everybody be a contender with that, that's not always the case. So that's just kind of my ideas and what I've been looking at as far as directions with it.
Chief, do you have anything to add?
Your Honor, I do. So I've worked here 20 years. The previous chief was a very anti-fireworks person. He had a waste bin right outside the back door of the police department, and he had a very zero tolerance on fireworks. The problem with that is we only have 2 officers working that night. And so unless you want to make the whole police department work, you literally have 2 police officers answering all of the other calls for service, plus fireworks calls. We can do that. It's really hard, though, to tell the guys, hey, I know these other calls are priority. City Council wants you to go answer fireworks calls, so go on those. I mean, so I can tell you when Mike Broadhead was here, we'd have 50, 60 calls for service for fireworks that night. Well, when you have 2 guys working, again, that's just not really, a good thing. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm more than happy to enforce the law if that's the way you guys want to go. Just know that there's 2 officers on the street at the time, and so I just don't know how effective it will be.
Your Honor.
Rebecca?
How did the calls compare last year and this year to the years prior when they were not allowed? Did you have more calls or less calls?
We always have way more calls when they're not allowed.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because this last year we had 3 or 4 calls. I think I pulled up the last 4 years, and every year there was 5, 6 calls maybe.
Okay.
But when I was on patrol and when Mike Broadhead was here, we'd have 40, 50 calls for service.
Thanks, Chief.
Mrs. Bebout, thank you for coming.
I'd like to have had my granddaughter here so she could sing Fireworks by Katy Perry. Linda Bebout, for those who don't know me. My 4th of July was horrendous. Started out at about 7 o'clock in the evening when a young man in my semi-private senior neighborhood threw a live firecracker in front of my car. And while my son said, well, you should have called the police, I chose instead to just yell at him. That was a stupid thing to do. His entire family was standing there in front of his grandmother's house, and they were laughing. So we got home, and then the noise started, and the noise ended at 1:30. I read in the paper that there were numerous calls for fire trucks, that there were not enough trucks available to answer all the calls. And I really think the wisest thing to do is to have designated areas all around town where families can go. You could charge them a $3 fee and then say some civic group is going to clean up this area in the morning. Civic groups are always looking for a way to make a little bit of money, and that it ends at 11 o'clock, which is a reasonable time. People in my neighborhood, when it's getting dark at 7, they're in bed by 7, sadly. Some, not me, but a lot of them are. The other thing is that has always bothered me is that so many dogs run away, and then people have to go and bail them out of the pound. And I truly think you should consider reducing the fees when the dogs have escaped from yards that are foolproof because of their trauma over the noise of the fireworks. I've lost an ironing board cover to a dog that I didn't know was afraid of fireworks. I mean, that was minimal. But now, for 2 or 3 days after the 4th, we have to drag him out of the house. He's scared to death. He's traumatized. When my kids were young, we went to the lake. There were 4 or 5 families. Each family brought their own fireworks. We took turns around the circle. Everybody had a chance to display their fireworks. Any aerial displays should be in an area where you can control it, where the fire department can have a truck there, and where it can be safe and people could go and watch them instead of cowering in their house. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Mrs. Bebout? Do you have any ideas of where you think would be a good idea?
Tonkin Stadium. It's still school district property. The area off Smith Road where the Little League plays, Rhine Park, Sunset Park, Fairground parking lot, along the Riverwalk. That would not be as easily accessible for the fire department, but most of the others would. It's something I've been thinking about for, 4 months? Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Warpness, would you like to address us?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Guard, council, staff, appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you this evening. First of all, I want to commend you for having this work session on this issue. It would be very easy to put it on the back burner and just wait until it goes away. Too bad a little more effort could not have been put into advertising this meeting. With only 2 of us here, well, I feel that there's a lot of people out there that I've talked to that have strong feelings on it, and I think if we had had better publication, and that's not just from the city side, it's also publication within our community. I just don't feel that, we're getting that word out there on very important issues. When we have things like this, that the community needs to be involved in them. It's frustrating when I go and have coffee with guys and I say, what'd you think of the meeting last night? They say, what are you talking about? Well, here we are again. Oops. Guess that's not hooked to anything. Secondly, as a veteran and a patriot, I'm very supportive of the 4th of July and all that it implies to this country. Thirdly, as a child at heart, I have always enjoyed the firework display that we have had each year. This has been great. And it's a time that's really special to our community and to veterans and everything that goes along from a patriotic standpoint. I think we all share that and don't want to do anything that will damage that or take away from that feeling and that spirit. I think that's just critical to all of us. To the issue at hand, to continue with fireworks as we did at the last 4th, or to change them back to previous years. I guess I didn't realize this was the second year that we've had it open. Apparently the first year it wasn't quite as acknowledged by the public. They didn't take quite as much advantage of it because I don't remember it, or maybe I was out of town. Hell, I don't remember. In about 2013 or 14, when I was with the city, we had the fireworks display after the baseball season in the city park, and I don't remember just what that date was. We did, and had many volunteered to clean up the remains of the display after the event. As a volunteer, I have never seen such a mess. Okay, we worked for several hours and got most of it cleaned up. I remember Stephen Weaver and I going up and down and picking up little, bits of paper and trash, and it was a mess. To my knowledge, the city has never considered doing that again. Now we are scattering that mess all over town. In 1968, I was a member of the 3rd of the 17th Assault Helicopter Unit flying out of Benoit Air Base in the Republic of South Vietnam. I too am a combat veteran, and I share that. I appreciate your comments, Councilman Borders. That was the time of the infamous 1968 Tet Offensive. It was a little hairy then, but I can speak with certitude when I say the noise and duration of the cacophony did not compare to Riverton the last 4th. Okay, I mean, we were, during the Tet Offensive, right in the middle of it, at the Benoit Air Base, it was nothing like we had in Riverton on the 4th last year.
Boy, your memory must have gone.
My memory?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, Ten's offensive was terrible.
I was there. I know. We were flying helicopters outside of Benoit,
You
and
to say that statement, Mayor, brings a lot of question.
well, you take it for what it's worth. Okay. It was a little, to say the notice, I did not think that I had post-traumatic stress disorder, but around 11 p.m. on the 4th, after all the aerial bombs still going off, I was starting to wonder. We have many veterans in our community that have to deal with PTSD in a very real way, and the last 4th of July in Riverton did not help them. Maybe you're suggesting I have PTSD, I don't know. But it's a real problem. And a lot of our veterans, I remember when I was the commander of our VFW post, we had several members that you'd go up and say hi to them, and they would just melt because their nerves were so shot. Okay, I mean, they're just shot. And there's nothing they can do about it. They can't buck it up. They can't get the medication that'll solve the problem. It's a serious problem. And if it's something that we can control in our community, okay, then I think we should make an effort to try to do it. But like I say, I'm not opposed to the 4th of July. Living in a home with a wooden shake roof, I will have to admit a feeling of apprehension as I tried to go to sleep that evening beside my shivering pup, wondering if we would be wakened to a fire alarm. It's just a nervous feeling when you've got these things raining down and you've got a shake roof out there, and are you going to have your house catch on fire? We shouldn't have to worry about that in our community, I think. Okay? All things being taken into consideration, I would vote that we go back to the way it was with a large community fireworks display west of town. Small fireworks can be allowed in town, such as ladyfingers, black snakes, sparklers, and such for children, but no large aerial bombs allowed in town. If you're going to allow them, put a reasonable time limit and enforce it. And I am very sensitive to what the chief is saying, that, you know, if you take the rules off, people probably don't complain as much. I talked to 2 people before coming over here this evening and asked, are you going over to the council meeting to have a discussion about the fireworks? They says, why? It's a waste of time to come and talk. Maybe it is. I'm slow on the uptake on a lot of things, and I just keep banging my head against the wall, but in order to maintain my sanity, we have to express what we feel about issues. And I remember Chief Broadhead was very strongly opposed to it. And as Linda was speaking earlier, I was thinking most of the problems that we have in our community are a function of irresponsible citizens. And how you get, whether you're talking about weeds or whatever, it's individual citizens being irresponsible. And so the more rules you take off, the more you're allowing irresponsibility to flower. And it's a balance. You know, we all want to be free. But free to what? To abuse the rights of fellow citizens that come together in a community that want to live in quiet and harmony and safety? I don't know. It's a difficult issue. And that's why I was sincere when I said the first thing is to commend you for having this discussion, because it would have been a hell of a lot easier just to push it aside and we'll see you next year. So anyway, that's my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle?
When we enacted this, we were thinking that City of Riverton would like to be a place where people came versus left, where they were celebrating in their area versus going to the county or to the city of Lander or to Du Bois or somewhere else. And Mike commented at the time that we will see how they handle it. So the first time we handled the 4th of July, it was a no comment. There was nothing. It was a wet year. Second time we had it, we had been confined to our houses for 3 months. And out of that, people were willing to blow off firecrackers at 2 in the morning and startle everybody. Now, I would venture to say that if we continue on and we're not confined to our house, next year would be a no starter. It would be just as quiet as the first time around. And New Year's Eve would be the same way. But if we were confined and required to stay in grounds and you let off steam, you take the cap off your pressure cooker, you're going to let off steam. And I understand how some people feel about noise, and it's got nothing to do. And interesting enough, those calls for the fire department were not in the city of Riverton. And the apartment dwellers up there, getting a building on fire is pure, unadulterated lack of intelligence. But I think that we should allow, or we can also, as the city, petition the city or the School District 25 and see if they would open up Tonkin. I remember we had 2 people here that brought in caseloads of paper that had been in their neighborhood that had fallen in that area. And we recommended at that time that we have a designated area in those areas. And Tonkin Stadium is a confined area. I don't think really Tonkin area would really appreciate that type of noise. I really don't. But, you know, we've got to be mindful of all our people. But, you know, geez, firecrackers are just part of, as a kid, I am from big town of Utah, and I used to drive all the way up to Evanston to buy firecrackers because the people in Utah didn't like them because they were too noisy and they were too sophisticated. And so I think that we here in Wyoming still can allow a little noise and a little, I mean, my goodness, have we become that sophisticated? Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Tim?
You know, I don't think tonight was meant to be specifically like a public hearing or anything. As a work session, we're not going to be walking away from this, making any decisions. So although I really appreciate the feedback and having you here, Mr. Warpness and Mrs. Bebout, I don't think that was what this meeting was intended for, which is good. I'm glad you're here. But I do think that we've had a lot of, we had 3 hearings for the fireworks at first. Nobody showed up, I think. Maybe one.
No,
Trying to remember.
you can get the, no.
I think maybe the chief did, but that might have even been later. I vaguely, yeah.
If any, not very many.
And then I agree. I think our first year was a little bit of an anomaly on the easy side because, as I recall, it was raining until like 9. I mean, it was, yeah, it was like the opposite of this summer with no rain and heat. It was lots of rain. So I do think that first summer was a bit of an anomaly, and I agree that this summer was definitely an anomaly. But, you know, we've already got it built into our ordinance where by resolution we could say this year we're not going to do it. And so rather than just automatically saying we're going to do fireworks this year, I don't think there'd be a problem with having a public meeting 2 weeks before July 4th, 3 weeks before July 4th, and just people have something to say they can. If there's worries about fire, we can talk about them then.
Well, we canceled that last fireworks and, because it was a red flag.
Right.
We did not.
No, I mean the county.
The actual people that were going to shoot the fireworks canceled.
Yeah, but it was,
Not the county nor the city.
but it was because of dry conditions.
Correct.
So I don't know. I think that's a way we could kind of meet in the middle a little bit. I agree. It seems like a shame just to say not to do it at all when last year may have been a bit of an anomalous year. I say last year, but 2 months ago. But I do think giving people a chance to come here and speak and say what they think, come up with ideas, I think the idea of designated areas seems like a good one. We could consider that by resolution. I think we could even do that the way it's written. And so I think just taking it year by year rather than just it's an assumption it's going to happen is not a bad idea. And at the very least, people can come and say their piece. So that's just my thought. I think I agree. Obviously, the year before last, or last year I should say, yeah, wasn't that bad if you didn't even notice it. But, I mean, yeah, it also did rain until like 9 o'clock or something. So I just think if we took it year by year and we just said we're just going to set a time we're going to consider a resolution, we either pass a resolution or we don't. Maybe we don't pass a resolution, maybe we do. Either way, we give people a chance to come and speak on it. That'd be all my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilman Bailey?
You good?
You numb?
Yeah. I guess my only comment would be, I am equally frustrated with the apathy of the public in participating in the process. But I think the city does a great job of promoting what we're going to be doing at our meetings. We have our website, we publish our agenda, plenty of time ahead. If you want to pay attention and see what's on the agenda and comment, there's adequate time to come and do that. Okay, so for anybody to say the city's doing things without notifying the public, in a hurry, trying to pull one over on anybody is ridiculous, in my opinion. And so, everything we've ever done, to my knowledge, we have always had public notice and time, and we don't rush anything through this process. The fact is, just people don't want to participate unless it's an issue that's extremely important to them, and I understand that, but can't wait until it's all done and then complain about the result if you don't participate. And so I think people need to participate, and I think we all welcome their comments, their emails, however they want to participate's fine, but I mean, we do a pretty good job of notifying the public of what we are doing and what we are talking about, and, when we're having meetings and all of that kind of stuff. So I think we're good. I think we ought to play it by ear, keep doing this and pay attention. And if there's some tweaks that we can do that will help, I think that's great. So, thank you.
Your Honor, just one more comment.
Kyle?
And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but to add to Mike's comments, when we had a liquor license that was going to be moved to Maverick, 120 feet from Smith's, we had a petition, we had people that did not want it. We understood that clearly. The second thing, we had a zoning change up on West Main, and we had an outstanding number of people that were there that did not want that supply store going in there. So we have not changed anything on our notification of what's going on, and we welcome people coming in and so we can see which way they're going. I understand that we run small little pools and we go out on Facebook and we do this, but the most important thing is when people come in, we have enough chairs that they can sit and tell us that they don't want something. We get the strict influence. They don't want it. Last thing I have to say, when we were piling snow to the curb or piling snow to the center, Mr. Butterfield told us that he could clear all of the roads quicker and faster and easier if we would pile the snow to the curb. The people said, no, we don't want our driveways blocked off. And Mr. Butterfield said, well, let's do a survey on it and see what we want to do. And I said, we've already got a survey. They don't want it. They want it piled to the center so they can get out of their driveways. So that's the way it went. So we are trying to do our level best on hearing the public. And I understand, I've talked to people and I listen to special groups and everything else. Showing up really does something. Thank you.
Thanks. Mayor?
This is the only thing that I have seen in print, okay, not on Facebook, not on the radio. I listened diligently when yourself and Tony go on Chit Chat. You do a wonderful job there, and I commend you for that. But this is the only thing that I have seen in the Riverton Ranger, and it is the notification of this council work session. And in about 4-point type, it says fireworks discussion, 2 words. That's it. Now, in my opinion, humble opinion as it is, it would have been wonderful if it could have been in the Ranger somewhere as an article. And that's where I'm suggesting that the communication problem is just as much on the other side of our news media as it is with the, and I shared Kyle's frustration. I've said where you guys have said for a number of years, and I know how difficult it is. And that's why I worked so hard to get the council chambers televised. When we hired, our city administrator at that time, I told him, I said, the only way we're going to tell if you're successful or not is if you get the council chambers televised. And he was able to get them televised. And it's what a blessing it is. And you've done a wonderful job there, and you're continuing to do it, but it's a struggle to keep against it and to maintain balance, where you're not just inside the bubble, and it's the citizens out there that you need to be reaching out to. And I understand that it's their obligation. That's what we fought for, is so they would have the right to vote and be involved. And I get on the group that I have coffee with hard new, come on, you guys. But it's frustrating, especially, when you have that feeling that, well, it doesn't make any difference if you come and talk or not. And whether we're talking about shipping containers or whatever it is, when you have petitions and you bring them forward and nothing happens. So I don't know what the answer is, but we're getting back to that irresponsible citizens again, and I am one, and I'm probably as irresponsible as anybody, but we just keep trying to roll that big ball of spaghetti forward and keep all the ends plugged in as we're rolling it. And it's a challenge. No, I think by and large the city is doing a wonderful job, and the staff is doing a good job. I don't have any complaints at all there. So. Anyway.
Thank you, Mayor. My thoughts are kind of a lot different than what I've heard here tonight. I think that we don't celebrate the grandness of America well. And I don't know if it's because we're embarrassed or exactly what it is, but I had two uncles that fought in the World War II, and my own father, and if you ever wanted to bump up against those individuals like Mayor Warpness, they gave a great deal for their service. And where I come from is I don't think we give homage to the 4th of July and let people have the understanding that there's very few places in the world that people have actually fought for others to have freedom to do what they choose to do. Now, Mayor Warpness makes a good point. If we didn't have to worry about people if no one would speed, we wouldn't need police officers on Main Street. We may have to put them somewhere else, but we wouldn't have to worry about speeding if we could just talk everybody into obeying the laws. The court that sits behind us wouldn't have any work if there wasn't people that disregarded that information. But boy, it really swells up in me a pride for where we live to see so many people involved. I got 4 written letters from individuals that were disappointed with fireworks. I've bumped into many, and maybe it's because the job I have right now, I would say close to hundreds of people that said they appreciate what is done to bring a sense of pride back to the community of what our veterans have paid for. I think that's been described with the Veterans Park out back. I couldn't be more pleased with what the veterans are doing there. Once again, in an obscure, hard place to go and find. There we are. And so I see the 4th of July as a way different thing than let's just go get a case of beer and get wild and crazy and shoot a bunch of fireworks. I had one gentleman that came and talked to me. I hesitate to use names because I don't want people to be embarrassed, but he really gave me the riot act about how irresponsible the fireworks were. And I just took that in stride. And then a week or so later, I met him at the golf course, and he said, I started to explain to my brother about fireworks and how I felt about them, and he told me that I was way off base. I didn't say anything to him. He said, I realize that for those few hours, which is 6 hours that it's available to celebrate, maybe there's something I should do to enjoy that more myself. And I thought that was really pretty brave of him to point out that maybe his opinion shouldn't always rule over everyone else's. So I don't, and I know Mayor Warpness infers to the fact that we don't listen and we run over people. If we had a meeting 3 weeks before and had everybody come that wanted to shoot fireworks and everyone that didn't want to shoot fireworks, we would have not a coming together of the community, but we would have a combative spirit in this room. And we would have people that were angry for what somebody said and somebody did. I don't know how to get this room full. We've sat in these meetings for a lot of years and done a lot of important things, and the room just doesn't fill up well. I told Tony that they better unlock the door tonight, or we wouldn't have anybody in. And so I understand all sides of that, but what I'm trying to do, I go up to the school and I see kids that don't even know what was paid for by blood and sacrifice from our soldiers. I could not be more impressed. If you want to look and find a hero in the world today, Command Sergeant Major Griffin is that guy. And I don't know how many command sergeants there are in the Army, but I've been told that there's very few. And there's only one more promotion that he could have, and that was to a one-man position. There's only one sergeant major in the Army. Now, I don't know how true that is, but this is a young man that was raised in Riverton, Wyoming, that did what I think is admirable, commendable, to go and serve, leave his family, and give his life for his country. Now we can all argue over, was the war commendable, or was it a good war, a bad war? He didn't make those choices. He just served. He just went and served. And so I would like to install in the youth of Riverton some kind of feeling for how important their freedoms are and what it does take to have those freedoms. Fireworks don't necessarily make that any better. I don't know that that's the answer. Designating spots is a great idea unless you live in the spot they designate. And I don't even mind that. You mentioned Ryan Park. I would not mind people shooting fireworks by my house at all. I
think you would restrict, not only designate, but restrict the hour, so that people who wanted to watch the aerial fireworks could go to the different.
That's a great idea, and we probably should work on that. There's nothing wrong with that. One great display like Idaho Falls does, I think Melaleuca puts that on, and they spend about $80,000 a year to put on a wonderful, it's choreographed to music, and you can turn your speakers, turn your radio to the right channel, and you can sit miles away and listen to that. And it's terribly patriotic and respectful of the military and the men and women of our service. So that's really what I would hope that we would spawn and create is a spectacle that we could say, can't do this everywhere. You can only do this in America. And this is pretty important that we have the opportunity to do something like that. And so I think that the conversations are good. Councilwoman Schatza lives half a block from Tonkin Park. I don't think she would protest that.
I would encourage it.
Yeah, and I don't mind Ryan Park being used. I think we need to state some true facts, though. Out of the 16 fire calls, 2 were in the city limits. 14 were out of the city limits. I was in Lander for their fireworks, and they had their fire trucks going all the time that evening. But I think the count was pretty much the same, that there wasn't much action inside the city. The gentleman that I talked to at the golf course, that was his complaint. He had to stay home and guard his house so it would not burn down. I've lived a fairly conscious life of of the things like that, and I can't remember any houses lighting on fire from fireworks. I can't remember any shake roofs catching on fire. That doesn't mean we shouldn't worry about it, but I think sometimes practical thought outweighs what the damages are. And so, as much as I would like to be the guy that always calls another meeting and lets another group of people come in and tell us what to do, I think that's commendable, but it also just leads to more people that are upset with what we're doing. And we don't have a police department. If I raise the fine to $5,000 for shooting fireworks, you still only have so many minutes to get around and pick up those people that are breaking those laws. And so we pick up one or two, and they learn their lesson. We have to put them back in the court system, and what a wreck. We had 41 people come into court last Wednesday, and 5 showed up. So that system is, if there's a broken system, there it is. And so I don't know the answer. I think it denounces a little bit more conversation. We do advertise the dates, and if you truly are of the nature that you don't like it and it disturbs you, you have opportunity to do other things and not participate, to go to the lake or wherever you want to go. And so I think maybe we ought to have a little bit deeper discussion, designated areas. But I think it's kind of like when we built the apartments down on 16th Street, when we designated them to be the new location for apartments, we had 250 people in the room.
I was one of them.
That were opposed, right?
That's right.
And then the city just went right ahead and pushed through and put the apartments down there. So just because we load the rooms doesn't mean that the city's going to do what we want them to do. So I appreciate everybody's opinion. I mentioned it to people. Councilwoman Schatza put it on her Facebook, and this is the conversation that we have. So I do appreciate you, Mayor. I've always appreciated you and consider you a good friend, and I appreciate that. And Mrs. Bebout, you deserve the same admiration. You come when it's an important item to you, and so I don't want to make light of those things. We should discuss that. We did not call that fire display off. The manufacturer or the people that were shooting those ordinances called that off. And at the time, I was disappointed, to be real frank. I wanted those fireworks to go. And we want things to happen in Riverton. This council is aggressively hoping to get Riverton to progressively go after the things that bring people to Riverton. And so if you really like fireworks, this must be the place to come. And so I do appreciate the conversation. We should have some further discussion about it and see if there's some compromise that would work. My information is that it's more than well accepted by the majority. And so that's where I sit today. So unless anybody else has any other comments to make, Mrs. Bebout.
Last year, 2019, was on a Thursday night, which was rainy. This year was a Saturday night, which probably is very significant. And I'm not opposed to fireworks. I just felt that they were out of control. It was like people were using the parking lot at Reach. And it was like being in the middle of a bomb shelter. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I was in Lander, I wasn't in Riverton. I came down from my perch on high and watched those in Lander. And I have to tell you that it was an awesome display to sit over the top of Lander across the Poposia and see the fireworks. It was gorgeous. And I'm sure there were plenty of people in Lander that thought it was too much. But I got to tell you, it was awfully impressive. And so And that's just me. I want more patriotism. I want more people to be appreciative of our police. I want more people to be appreciative of our military and what they sacrifice to go and do those things. And I think Chief has pointed out a really good thing. I guess we could bring in all of the police and make them work that night, but that wouldn't necessarily be really appreciated either. So unless anybody has anything further, we'll move this discussion. Thank you. Appreciate your attendance. The next item on the agenda is the City of Riverton's logo, review and discussion. City Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I could have just a moment, I have to attempt to make this work. No laughing.
I can ask the IT guys to come help you.
You know, I really should, but for just a second, I'm gonna try one more thing, and then I'm gonna ask for help. Actually, I'm gonna try one more thing, and then I'm gonna shout at it, and then I'm gonna kick it, and then I'm gonna ask for help, because that's how I'm told you're supposed to do these things.
Just don't throw it.
Or Tim's probably paying attention and will walk in here on his own.
In 3, 2, almost.
He may let you struggle a little. Sometimes you just have to ask for help.
Could be in there laughing hysterically, too.
They probably are, to be fair. Last time I did this, I had to have Kyle help me. Right, Kyle?
That's right.
Well, I'm on there.
You did it. You
I
did
got it. I just got to get the screen on. Kyle, can you show me how you did that last time? He's better at that than I am.
Right click, first-
It always does that to mine. I don't know why. We could pull it over there.
Oh, darn it.
Doesn't just want to.
There you go.
Okay, we'll make that work. All right. All right. Thank God for.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks
Take
for
tomorrow.
Kyle for making sure I can actually give a presentation. Mayor and Council, a while back we had a conversation about trying to develop a logo for this city to use instead of the seal that we had been using as an advertising symbol. Nothing wrong with the seal, and we intend to completely use that. So let's get that out of the way right at the beginning and saying the seal's not going anywhere. We're not going to make a new wood sign for behind the council chairs, but we are looking at using and developing and using something that can help us market our community more consistently and give us some brand recognition. This has been a conversation going on for a little bit now. We've talked about items like this when we did the renaming on the airport. Why? Search engine, how we present ourselves to the public, what we can use, what is recognizable. These are all things that we considered when we were going through this process. So we were really, really fortunate, having done this before and realizing that we executed a contract with Herman Global for $1,500. Most of the time, these cost a significant amount more to receive what we had. And I cannot thank Herman Global for the work they did and the patience they had with us during that. And I'm also pleased to report that Florian Herman of Herman Global is directly behind me and is here to help support and is here to help answer any questions that you'll have tonight. What I wanted to do is to go over really quickly the process that we went through, as well as some of the results that we have. You have most of that within your staff report, so I can go over that a little bit, but I won't belabor it terribly. And then we'll go over the options that we have. I'll show you one of the, we have a modification to one of the options based on some input. It's minor, but it ends up being a little bit significant in terms of the visual, and I'll go over that and present that to you. I will abstain from a recommendation openly right now. If you have any questions at the end, I can provide the reason for recommendations, as can we can have a discussion with Florian about some of the things that they took into account. So, backing up, when we decided to start this process, one of the first things we received was mood boards. Some of you had input into that. Other members of our community, of our staff, all had input into that. What that basically did is take different design elements, different design aspects, ideas, and said, what do you like, what do you not like? And we received feedback. Some of it was a circle, one or two things we like, hey, don't do this. We turned that all into Herman Global, and they helped use that to design or to further the conversation and ultimately aid in the development of 3 logo options, which is relatively common, those 3 options. Those 3 options were ultimately presented to us, at which time we started, council kind of had the first opportunity, saw those through email, staff saw them. We also ultimately presented those to the airport board, received feedback from other individuals as we had the option to, the ability to. So if a couple people came in, sometimes we just asked them their opinion. We had staff look at it, and we even presented it to RECDA. At each time, what we did is we took votes. All the time, the mayor's been there, Councilman Bailey, just post-it notes after the presentation, say, hey, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. Tell us what you like. Ultimately, at the end of it, the first and third, which I'll go over, ended up being the 2 front runners, with the third option being the leader, not by a ton, but the leader. In all cases, the second option did not ever take the lead, even though at the end we did get some push on it from some of the input. So what I wanted to do real quick is just go over the item that you have, the initial logo designs, and answer any questions that you have. Obviously, Florian is here. He can answer some of the questions you have. We will say that one of the things that we did do and that we did provide is very specific feedback as part of the discussion is the use of the balloon. You'll see that in 2 of these. Why? Because one of the more unique things that we have going on is the balloon rally. The ability to use that was important. When we started looking at that, one of the design elements we suggested was trying to implement the use of the little place marker, for the online place marker, like if you're going to Google Maps, and put that as part of a balloon. Can we do something like that? Can we bring that visually forward? And I think they did a good job in some of the options of providing that. So what we wanted to do tonight, I'll go through them. We would like you to give us any feedback you have, or which one you would like to have brought forward, and we'll bring it forward at the next council meeting for formal approval. With that being said, I'll start going through these just one by one. Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing. You'll see on each of the slides that there are multiple options. You'll have the base design, and then you'll have city of, and then Riverton. And then you can put Wyoming under there. You can see all those different options you can work in there. Obviously, we do want to draw attention to the fact it's Riverton, Wyoming, because of all the conversations we've had about Riverton, Utah. We also wanted to make sure that how it looked on things like street signs. So you'll see at the last page of each option what it looks like on a street sign. And I can blow that up a little bit if we need to. Please just tell me as we go. So with that in mind, we started out, and we'll go to the first option. This is the one that does not have the balloon implemented in it. But this did receive it at present. It's in second in the place in the votes. Not by a ton, though. So we do put out here, we see the rendezvous city here, and you will see as we go to the second one, there are different options we can do. You don't have to choose one of those options. This entire design is one, and it can be used in many different ways. It can also be used in marketing or other groups that are associated with the city or other boards. So if we had a board like the engagement committee, City of Riverton Engagement Committee, and you can use the same font. It's easy to use. We could also, of course, put Wyoming. Each of these will show what it looks like white on a dark background and dark on a light background, because using the monochromatic setup is usually something that you end up using in one way, shape, or form. So they should be able to read fairly well that way. We did want to see what it would look like on different items, on t-shirts. Oddly enough, one of the things you want to do is, what does it look like on a t-shirt? Why? Because it's going to be on them, it's going to be on shirts, it's going to be on a lot of things. We've even taken the time to put some of these on letterhead to just look at them. I didn't bring those tonight, but to look at them. And I will say the ones, we did number 1 and number 2, and both of them did look very nice. They did pop out and they did stand out. Being able to read them on street signs is very nice. It's part of the discussion. Can I move on? The second option is this one. Now, this was the first one to implement balloon and was part of it. We had some interesting feedback on this one, to be honest with you. Again, multiple options. I will say all of these really do read well in single colors. And then the third one. Now, just to be very clear, so I'm going to switch over to another one. This was the third option. This is the current leader in terms of votes, but let's be honest, we didn't go and get 2,000 votes either. One of the pieces of feedback that I did receive that we wanted to implement, because when you look at it, and it really did matter, is we intended to have the balloon very noticeable, and some folks said that, well, I can't really tell if that's a basket, and that was good feedback. So I'm going to move over. It blows up the basket just a little bit and makes it a little more distinct. So what you're being provided as an option here would be this option is for the third with the slightly larger basket. Moving on to but again, using Riverton, Wyoming, the rendezvous city. City of Riverton, and of course we can put the Wyoming directly under that as we did before. On single colors. And ultimately on vehicles, and sorry, I zoomed in so much and can't seem to zoom out with the use of the screen.
Go to the
We lost the water bottle.
Go to the 3-dot ellipsis in the upper right-hand corner. You can change your zoom setting.
Oh, thank you.
You can also shift and right-click.
I'm taking a class in a week. I thought I was okay with technology, and then I learned how not okay I am.
It's overrated.
Again, so these were the options. Do you want to hear the feedback that we had? We had significant feedback on the second and the third, and a little bit of feedback on the first. You want to hear that, or would you like to discuss it at your?
I wouldn't mind hearing.
The first one, a lot of people did like it. They liked it simple, it's clean. It's easy to read. The negative feedback to that was it's non-distinct. It's not terribly unique in its design, even though it brings in the design elements that were pointed out. So yes, however, some people felt that it could be used and transposed if you put a different name in there, and that's something you do want to avoid. The second one, to be honest, a lot of people said it looked like Maverick. I heard that, and as soon as I heard that, then I couldn't unsee it. And I was like, okay, and that's fair. However, the use of the balloon in that and having the mountains That was really, a lot of people really liked that one. And it does read well, it's well balanced. The third one, we probably had the most feedback on, only because it had many design elements. So with this, the balloon and the place marker was prominent. The use of the small O in the name made it unique. We looked at an option without it, and it honestly took something away. It looks a little bit like a brand and harkens a little bit to a Western culture, but it's not overpowering. When we took out the, we had the option real quick and looked at it with just a big O, and it really did lose something in its uniqueness. This also, the other thing that I can't unsee anymore is the gun sight, the iron sight of the balloon. However,
True.
being in a part of the world that embraces Second Amendment, and we do a fair amount of hunting, that's actually a marketing aspect. One of the things we heard about this, we made the changes already to account for some of it, and the colors were desirable. We did get feedback on attempting to change the mountain range and make it be able to see Surveyor's Gap. However, when we started trying to do that, it just didn't work. One, the profile was difficult, and two, what we found was that most of the time when the conversation was when you send it out, when it's in a magazine or nobody knows, unless you're here, nobody knows what it is. If you say you have mountains, they can identify it. That's generally what we did here. Little ups and downs on both of those. The color palettes were all positive. They're all similar. Second and third are similar, but not the same. But they are really, having three of them and how it reads on all of those, it was very positive. So we had a lot of very positive on all the different options. With that, Your Honor, I have nothing else to present on it. I'll happily answer any questions you have.
Anybody got any questions? Tim?
Just curious, since you had the balloon element in some of the other ones, did anybody consider introducing the balloon element in the first one, or did you kind of like the simplicity of it? I'm just saying, like in the O or something, for example, like you had in the second.
I got to be honest, other than having penciled it in, we didn't have the conversation. When we got it and I penciled it in on paper when I was doodling on it. The only challenge I saw was trying to get it to read as an O in that font and match the rest of the font because it's all capital. So I'm going to be honest, we did not go down that road. Not that I didn't look at it, but it wasn't something we chased.
Mayor, I would almost even say that it looks like an image you could just put in the middle of a balloon if you just had the balloon around it. Now, me personally, I'm a big fan of 3 or option C, and I've voiced that pretty well to Tony, but if you were looking to incorporate a balloon in the first one, I almost feel like that would just be the label, and then you would put the balloon around it.
I'm not saying that one's my favorite, but it does look nice. There's just something about it that looks clean and really easy to look at, isn't too complicated. But that's the problem. You could put anything in there. You could put Tony's Pizza Shack in there. And
it was one of the options, but I took it out before the presentation.
You have
One of the reasons for the balloon, if I may, Your Honor, one of the reasons for the balloon is there is sometimes a desire to have a branding element within that can be pulled out. So I always use the Nike swoosh because it's easy. Originally it said Nike and they had the swoosh under it. Great, no problem. Now you just see the symbol, not the name, and you know exactly what it is. Having that balloon element, that stylized balloon element, like this one so either this one, being able to pull this out. In a previous community, we did it in Douglas, and we did the design there. For the wayfinding, they pulled out the unique element of that branding and put it on all the signs, so it acted a little bit like that swoosh. So having that balloon element does become useful because then you can pull it out as brand recognition becomes more prevalent. And that does take a little bit of time.
Mike?
I guess I have a tendency to lean toward number C also. And I've had a lot of different logos for my different business entities and stuff. And I keep finding myself simplifying and simplifying and simplifying. And because, you know, simpler is better, I think, especially with logo type stuff. And I think this one is, like you said, where you could eventually, if you used the balloon with the mountain background, eventually, even if you didn't have Riverton on there, people would make that association, like the Nike swoop. And the balloon and the mountain rendezvous kind of a thing is sort of what, you know, we market around here. And I think it fits those. And it has the ability to add the additional stuff, like you said, like under there where it says Riverton, Wyoming, or Riverton, the rendezvous city. I mean, you easily can just add those things as necessary. And it looks like it fits. And so to me, you know, you could have just the balloon, or just the balloon in the mountains, or the Riverton underneath, or the additional stuff depending on what you need. And it really is a nice, flexible design that could easily be used for a lot of different things.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. I'm gonna plug this now, though.
So tell us what you're going to do with that. You're going to bring it back to us, or what are you going to do?
So, I'm sorry, Your Honor, what I would suggest that we do is to bring this back to you, a full recommendation for approval. At this point, we are inclined to recommend, based on the votes, based on the feedback we've had, and based on the discussions among staff and others, option C, with the larger balloon basket, as you saw this evening, and to have that adopted by resolution at the next meeting. That would be our recommendation to bring forward.
Is everybody all right with that? Let's go.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Does staff have anything else for us this evening?
No, Your Honor, I do not believe so.
Kyle, because you did such a good job on that computer, you can take tomorrow off, all right?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Kyle is going to get us a new baby tomorrow, so he should have the whole day off. So,
Thank you.
little boy.
That's right.
He's got 2 girls and no boys yet. He'll regret that. But no, you won't. I just threw that in. They're wonderful. Both sexes are a lot of fun.
Thank you.
I do prefer girls, though.
No.
With that said, is there anything else that anybody wants to add? No? Thank you, guys. We'll stand adjourned at 8:19.